There's not a moment to lose. Kindly ask your trusty unshaven father to see the... Hey, Ming... No questions at this time, if you please, Mr. Sato. Okay. And for what? Doesn't that imply that your deductions are normally correct, Mr. Sholmes? But doesn't exactly... Now then. You may be surprised to learn that I'm a very busy man. I certainly... joining us for tea, men. I leave the sending of this in your hands, and then, my dear fellows. Ah, wait a minute, Mr. Sholmes. He just sort of ran off, didn't he? Quite pace, and left the unpaid bill for his tea behind too. I must catch up with father at the telegraph office at once, and I'll run across a cab straight away. And there was me thinking everyone would be clamouring to pay Mr. Sholmes' bill. Ow! Fuck. That hurt. Is he back yet? Yep, he is. Kazuma. I thought it wouldn't be long before he paid me a visit, Rinosuke. I was right about what I said, wasn't I? Sorry? That you have all the makings of a great defense lawyer. So, long story short, you're just testing. Well, I always believed that you'd fulfill your dreams of advocating in the British courts. Just never imagined for 1 second I would be as a prosecutor. Seeing you standing in a foreign courtroom, so gallantly realizing your dream, Kazuma-sama. I'm truly happy for you. And I'm truly thankful to you, Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. Rinosuke, I always thought it would be fun for you and I to shake up the British legal system a little together. This isn't quite how I envisaged it, no, but I suppose just no twist of fate. I've learned a lot of things during my time in London, about how Shisato's father was himself a visiting student here once, along with Judge Jigoku, and about what happened with your father. You'll have no difficulty understanding why I had no choice. I had to find a way to get to Britain as a visiting student myself. I want to hear from you, Kazuma. As you wish, Rinosuke Naruhodo. Congrats. Your disappearance. It's getting on for a year since what happened on the SS Bergen. Oh, it's been a year now. I thought it was still 6 months. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain when a bizarre series of coincidences. Serious? I think someone fell asleep on the keyboard. Our autocorrect was fucked up. Into those tragic events. I thought I had lost my best friend forever. I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I awoke, I was lying on the bed. It was in our little room. There was a posy of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize I was in the cabin of a ship. I slipped out of the room and ended up on the deck. Are you already suffering from amnesia at that point? Yes, I didn't know what happened or where I was. There was just this voice in my head. Go to Great Britain, your task awaits you there. It was a calling I couldn't ignore. It compelled me relentlessly. Out on deck, I saw I was on a huge steamship and we were docked in a large port. It must have been Hong Kong. Yes, it must have been. Presumably just before they were due to carry your body off the ship. I had no idea of the situation, but I did have the feeling that this was in some way my last chance, so I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. Then I disappeared into the crowded streets of that foreign port city, so I could plan my onward journey to Great Britain. Just under a year ago, with all my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Everything was foreign to me. The sights, the sounds, the smells, my head reeled. It was truly a loss. I realise now that I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back. No money, of course. Oh, how terrifying for you. Lucky though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose. That's right. And on the back of that, I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling at Campbell's ports, I finally arrived at Dover. That must have been some 3 months ago now. Your formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and had literally nothing to his name. But he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. Of course, I had no idea where he had moved heaven and earth to get here at that point. So, how did you end up becoming Lord Von Zeetz's apprentice then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard. By sheer coincidence, Lord Strongheart was there to attend the meeting. That's when the second feather in my cap came into play. Would that have been your knowledge of the law? Yes, exactly. Lord Strongheart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. And then, 9 days ago, you finally got your memory back after the trial involving Trevor. Yes, I did. Ever since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream. Feels weird seeing him with a bandana on now. Then again, wouldn't really contrast red and white. I know it's to show that it's an entirely different side to him. Do you know the entire time about what happened to your father here? 16 years ago. When my father left on that exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It's my last memory of him. But what I remember most about my father is his unswerving sense of justice. 6 years after he left, a gentleman called at our family home told me that Genshin, my father, had been taken ill in England and passed away. It was Professor Mikotoba, your father, Susato-san. Oh my! Ever since then, the professor was very good to me, even helped fund my university education at Yume. I'll be forever in his debt. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he told me. Oh! Then one day, a letter arrived at our home, at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it, assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer and writer cursed the Asogi name. No! As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years. Presumably the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. If whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary, he could have been present at a closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. I imagine the British government did its very best to silence whoever sent that letter. Someone who knew the truth and couldn't bear resentment was always going to be a problem. But still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing? And there was a newspaper clipping included with the letter. It's the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree. Well, what did my father have to say about the letter? I couldn't bring myself to show it to him. Why not? Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me my father was taken by a fatal illness. It couldn't have been easy for him, and he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jigoku. To the other visiting student. He faltered for the briefest of moments, but then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment, I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily before recovering his poise. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to the strain of grief, and she too passed away. And that's when I made up my mind that one day, without fail, I would cross the seas to Britain and seek the truth for myself. The truth about my father, Genshin Asogi. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. Oh, Kazuma-sama. What we learned today in court turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering. Lord Von Zeeks isn't the Reaper, you know. I almost don't want to believe it myself, but it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was... It's clear that the Inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along. What? You mean you knew? The real question is, who's been giving orders to the Inspector? Yes, Baruch Van Zeeks is the real Reaper. And I know that 10 years ago, it was him who decided my father must be mass murdered and sent him to his grave. No, he was merely seeing that justice was done as law dictates. He's not to blame. Ultimately, it's people who condemn people. The law is just a tool that they use to do it. He's not wrong. When I was younger, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer, but looking at law nowadays, I'm glad I didn't decide to pursue that path. And when a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life. Kazuma! On the contrary, my father's life was taken by the Reaper. Kazuma, this is your armband. Actually, I think it's yours now. Sorry? You're the defense lawyer. You have a talent for it. I've always known that you would. And now, you've chosen to take that path in life. As your friend, I couldn't be happier for you. Or more proud. Kazuma, so you keep hold of that. Besides, I'm a prosecutor now. The armband would have no meaning for me. Well, if you're sure. Thank you, my friend. Won't be able to show him because it's... So shortly I found out he related to the case, red-headed lead, I mean. Forget about the katana, his words are sharp. Personally, it wasn't their plan to swindle everyone that surprised me. It was the fact that so many red-headed people gathered from all over London that day. A certain great detective being among them. I expect those two are in their cells as we speak, wishing they'd never dreamt up their little plan. Maybe they're busy plotting the next one. Yes, I am confused by the situation. You don't need to point it out. Sheesh, you're not the only one with memory problems, you know. Reaper. At last I get to take my revenge. Cosmo. Lord Von Zeeks isn't responsible for your father's death, and he's not the Reaper. He's a defendant and deserving of a fair trial. You mean like the one my father had? It's a closed trial now, too. The conditions are exactly as they were 10 years ago. And even if it ruffles some feathers, I have a plan to show that man for what he really is. Cosmo. Do you know who the man in the portrait is? Why would I? What? But you're Lord Von Zeeks' apprentice. Yes, apprentice, not friend. And during the time I was suffering from amnesia, I didn't even notice that picture. Oh, really? I mean, it's not the smallest picture. No one has the first idea what the man decorates his office with. What the? It's a scale model of the crime scene. Oh, yes. I realise that. Does the prosecution office make a model of the scene for every single case? Apparently so. Sometimes it helps visualise things better and notice things you haven't spotted before. Actually, a miniature notice board is very well. Be honest, you enjoyed making that. It's not my style, though. No, I noticed you've been working at the little table on the floor, kneeling down. Laser style. I thought it was some kind of punishment set by Lord Von Zeeks when I first saw it. I find it the most comfortable way to work. I couldn't do it after a couple of minutes of sitting with my legs folded under me. They started to go tingly. Don't exaggerate, Rinosuke. You both know you can't even manage a minute. Ouch! This is where Mr. Vigil was brought, apparently. To be frank, I'm a little worried about seeing him again. The lawyer. Hello again. Are you feeling better now, Mr. Vigil? Yes, thank you. Somewhat better. So sorry to have caused you to... I mean, it was because of me. If I hadn't exposed your secret and forced you to remember things you'd obviously tried to forget. The prosecutor was here until a few moments ago too. Just missed him. Oh, Cosmo beat us to it. He said much the same as you. He was very apologetic. But the truth is, I brought this upon myself. Please, don't think like that. Keeping it from Evie, my wife, all these years, I carried such a sense of guilt. But that's not the worst of it. Over time, I obviously came to deceive myself as well. You mean about your dismissal? Looking back now, I'm beginning to think that perhaps Inspector Gregson didn't stumble across me by accident at all. I mean, he compensated me so generously for acting as his stand-in. He was clearly concerned for my well-being and doing what he could to help. So perhaps Gregson knew exactly what had become of Mr. Vigil all along then. Sure, this is just desserts for... Just desserts? The term's just desserts, not just deserts. For 10 years of lies and deception, but... It wasn't me that helped the professor escape 10 years ago. It wasn't me. I swear it. I swear it's true. Oh, Mr. Vigil. I'm sure you'd rather not dredge up even more from your past at this time, but... If possible, could you tell us exactly what really happened? I want to. I need to get all this off my chest. I just want to tell you what I should have done. Inspector Gregson was obviously engaged in a special operation of some sort. He was investigating something that even Scotland Yard couldn't know about. Details of the Reaper's marks, yes. It was when he had to carry out those investigations, and I would take his identification and impersonate him. He'd pretend to be the inspector and carry out investigations on his behalf. Oh no, never! A common street peddler couldn't possibly carry out a proper police investigation. What I would do is go to the specified location and make a little hoo-ha. Just something to leave an impression, so everyone there would think a detective called Gregson was here. So, that's what you were doing on the day prior to the incident. Yes, he asked me to make an appearance at the park on Lime Street for the Red-Headed League event. And as usual, I flashed the inspector's identification around and was very vocal about my presence. But then you were taken prisoner by those red-headed fraudsters. Yes. So you would always make a point of showing Gregson's identification and generally being loud? That's what the inspector asked me to do, yes. And that's one way of becoming a legendary detective, I suppose. Okay. Not a good one, though. And as you know, I suffered this bruising around my neck at their hands. The following day, they kept their word and released me. Without returning the inspector's identification to you, however. We had arranged to meet in the Fresno Street room at 5 that day, so I could report back to the inspector. But at the agreed time, that's where I had the gunshot. It was at midnight on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. That was the time scheduled for the execution. The professor's execution never actually took place, did it? Or rather, the execution itself must have been used to effect the plan of escape. I hardly dare to imagine what a chilling plan it was. Berkeley was renowned for being the highest security prison in the country. So basically, Vigil, what you're saying is that you were a scapegoat. Everything that went in or out of the place was searched multiple times. But there was one notable exception, or rather, one notable loophole. Something that was never questioned. I have a feeling I know what that loophole was now. Coffins into which the bodies of the executed convicts were placed, correct? Yes. Once the coroner had confirmed the death of a condemned convict, the body was taken in its coffin for immediate burial in the Lowgate Cemetery just behind the prison. The chief warder first had to sign the necessary papers. After that, no member of staff was permitted to touch the coffin containing the body again. Alexa, is it going to rain tomorrow?
Tonight's rain advises tomorrow. There's a 67% chance. You can expect about 21.6 millimeters.
1 moment. Oh god. Mother. Deepa. Smells like one of yours. When executions took place, only the executioner and coroner were permitted inside the chamber. I'd wait in the adjacent on that occasion. Once I had that confirmation, went into the mortuary to find a long coffin as usual. Procedure was I would sign the paperwork and check the coffin to nail it shut. But for some reason that day, the coffin was already nailed shut. No! I didn't think anything of it at the time. It seemed that my deputy must have checked the coffin and nailed it shut before I arrived. So, you mean the coffin contained... Yes. I can only imagine that Sogi, having escaped his execution somehow, was alive inside the coffin. The coffin was then taken out through the main gates and deposited in Lowgate Cemetery. Presumably there wouldn't have been enough air inside to breathe for long, so in the early hours following the burial, someone dug up the coffin again to set Genshin free. But in the end, he was fatally shot in the graveyard anyway. What on earth really happened in Lowgate Cemetery that night, I wonder? I'm afraid I really don't know. I can say with certainty are two things. Sogi couldn't possibly have escaped that way without help from someone working in prison. And that somebody was not me. Obviously, you knew the man then? The professor, I mean, Genshin Sogi? Yes, I remember him well, in fact. Would you mind telling us what you know? Well, having been condemned to death as he was, any contact I had with the man was short, obviously. After that trial, which was carried out behind closed doors, attended only by elite members of the judiciary, they called for his execution to be carried out at the earliest possible opportunity. And the outcome of the trial was set from the beginning, wasn't it? It was a time of delicate diplomacy, when Britain and Japan were in the process of signing an important treaty. That meant that this potentially leaked discreetly. The man had less than a week in total. As I was the chief warder, I was sorry short staying cells until his final hour. I remember being struck deeply by his noble character and incredible resilience. What do you mean exactly? Yeah, it's pretty clear that it was when even then it was when, well actually no, that was a year ago. No. They were trying to stay on friendly terms because when you lost in the first trial, Jigoku always mentioned sending a telegram to Britain with their findings. He was a killer of many men, but he was always quiet and polite. He was a gentleman and a man of intellect. In fact, I couldn't bring myself to believe what he'd done, so I asked him one day. Those 5 members of the aristocracy whose lives were taken, were you really responsible? I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. The following day, when the closed trial took place, the verdict was no surprise. Guilty. That night, when he was brought back to his cell, I saw something unusual. Something unusual? What? The last will and testament of Genshin Sogi. As I said, it was on the night following his trial, after he'd been found guilty. I was doing the rounds of the cells, and when I looked into Sogi's, I noticed that he seemed to have a sheet of paper in his hand. His last will and testament then, presumably. As soon as he noticed me, he hurriedly shoved it behind his back. Well, why did you find that so unusual? Isn't it normal for a man to pen a will when he knows his death is nigh? Yes, that's true. But there were special conditions for Sogi's incarceration, you see. What sort of conditions? Well, even though he was held in a cell designed for condemned inmates, he was allowed to keep his personal effects with him. One exception. Really? He was allowed his things? That's unusual, certainly. Of course, he'd been convicted of killing 5 members of the aristocracy, but at the same time, he was a guest in our country from the Empire of Japan. The powers that be were determined that his final days shouldn't be needlessly uncomfortable. And what was the exception you mentioned? To the personal effects he was allowed. That's the point. He wasn't permitted to have writing materials. Specifically, no pens or paper. So, he was prevented from leaving any written record of what happened to him? Yes, that was long and short of it. I have no idea where he obtained that paper. Any writing materials had been confiscated from him upon his incarceration. As I said, he hid the paper behind his back, and then he pleaded with me. What did you just hide behind your back? Please turn a blind eye. This is my lifeline. But you know it's against the rules. You're the only person who's seen. If you just agree to keep it quiet. Alright then. But what's on that paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. How can a will be a weapon? So I decided to pretend I'd seen nothing and I let him keep his will. Then later, it just seemed to vanish without trace. What? What do you mean it vanished? It would seem that isn't the end of the story of this mysterious will. The will's disappearance. I was the only person who saw Sogi's will, but somehow it disappeared. It was after Sogi's execution, which was actually an elaborate jailbreak. The warders gathered up Sogi's possessions that were in his cell. They wanted to be sent back to his family home in Japan, you see. Poor Kazuma-sama. And you're saying that it wasn't anywhere to be found among his personal effects? The will, I mean? That's right. No, I didn't search through them myself. But Governor Caden was livid. He was screaming. It can't have happened. It can't have disappeared completely. That doesn't quite make sense now, does it? In what way? Well, we'd understood now only Mr. Vigil was aware of the will's existence. In which case, how did the prison governor know to look for it? Oh yes, you're right. I really don't know how he knew. It certainly seemed as though he knew of the will's existence from the outset. Only he didn't refer to it as a will. What he said was, the Asogi papers. The Asogi papers. I really can't tell you anything of the subsequent events. Because, well, of what happened. Your dismissal and the way you blocked it all from your memory. I'd forgotten all this until today. I don't suppose it's relevant to the case now. But anyway, thank you very much for sharing it with us, Mr. Vigil. We're very grateful. I'm afraid there's really little more I can tell you. My wife Evie will be here shortly, so I do hope I don't appear rude, but... No, not at all. Thank you again. What will become of you now? Well, impersonating a police officer. It's a criminal offence, of course. I imagine that once I'm fully recovered, I shall be arrested. I'm so sorry. Don't be, please. This was all my own doing. I always knew that this day would come. Well, I wish you well. Goodbye, Mr. Vigil. Ah! Before you go, there's just one thing. Oh, yes? What is it? The Asogi papers. I'd be very grateful if you'd make no mention of the things I told you about them. Presumably for some good reason. It's my understanding that their very existence is a closely guarded secret. If it became known that I'd remembered, well, it could be rather troublesome, I think. I understand. Some sort of will that Genshin Sogi penned just before his death, which the man himself claimed was his last weapon. I wonder, perhaps it had something to do with his plan to escape. If there's anyone who might know more about a document that Cosmo's father left behind, it'd be Mr. Vigil's governor. 2nd November, Barclay Prison. Governor's office. Oh, back again, are you? Yes, hello. I've heard all about your investigations. I read the report just now. You found him, eh? Vigil? Yes, luckily. Well, anywho, the laddie doesn't work here no more, so your case is now to do with Barclay. Or wouldn't he like you to get the wrong idea about that? Of course, yes, Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so... Yes, we've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given the chop. Aye, Kimmer. You can very well. So, how about we handcuff Biscuit? Oh, they really are like little handcuffs, and as hard as irons, too. So, what's brought you doing here today? Well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually. Is that so? We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Sogi's cell. I think it's been called the Sogi Papers or something? Did I not say Gregson's death is now to do with things that might have happened at Barclay? Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not fruit about irrelevant details. God, my voice crack at the end made my attempt at the accent sound worse. His expressions changed completely. We're clearly onto something here. Converse. 10-year-old legacy. That murder is botched execution, and the whole miserable escape. Near Barclay's darkest hour, a shocking embarrassment, because the convict had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean? Aye, for shame. The coroner who confirmed the death for the man after his execution called me Scythe, and my chief warder at the time, Vigil, who was in charge of the whole affair. But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it. The rascal wouldn't he say otherwise, eh? What, handcuffs? Oh, how can I say no? You can never have too much irony with that. When Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what had happened, he was so despairing he jumped out your office window, didn't he? I didn't like to say it, but that's just Vigil trying to get out of it. Do you not think he wouldn't have jumped from the shock of his crimes being exposed, eh? I do. You wouldn't say otherwise, though, would you? Of course, Kenny should know responsibility myself. I shouldn't have let him deceive me. Actually, there's barely anybody that can have went on at the time now. With Gregson having been murdered and Dr. Scythe forbidden from having any visitors. No visitors? Someone obviously is the one I give him things for. Well, we're not going home empty-handed. And I wouldn't dream of sending you packing without, Kimmer. Here, take a handcuff or two. Oh, well, it would be rude to say no. Wouldn't want to become anemic. I suppose if there's anybody who might still think about what happened back then. It'd been at last from the forensic division. Maria Gori. Maria Gori? Aye, Scythe's daughter. She didn't have no more. Just the one. By the way, Burns followed in her mum's footsteps. You didn't ever see her with her scalp in her hand. Ah! Mama, what's this? Ah! Where did she spring from? And did she just call the doctor Mama? Dr. Stipe's daughter, Maria Gori. I have to do with talking to her. So she's Dr. Stipe's daughter, but her surname is Gori? Aye, there's some family history, I'm sure, but I didn't ken ins and outs of it. What's that supposed to mean? Me? I have a different last name to my brothers and sisters. My brother and sister. She grew up watching her mum working with bodies of folks. What? Oh god, I got all playing by accident. She grew up watching her mum work with bodies of folks who died in strange circumstances and decided to do the same with her own life. I can't understand it myself. Perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother? Perhaps. Anywho, she was in charge of Gregson's autopsy, I believe. Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report. Someone told me once that the wee lassie always loved her mum's stories about cut up bodies. There's even a rumour that she used to listen to the funeral marches lullaby. Well then, perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy from the case 10 years ago. Aye, I'd say there's a fine chance at least. After all, that was a life-changing case for all of us. Maybe I need to speak to Miss Corey herself about this, I think. Well, thank you very much. I'm not happy about any part of this. It took years for Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Can you not give up on this, laddie? Stop asking pointless questions. I'm sorry, I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone. Can you not just stay away now? Leave me alone and then you come back here, eh? How'd you come to know about that, laddie? There's not many folk even here in the prison who've heard of those papers. Well, I can't tell him Mr. Vigil told me. I'm afraid our sources must remain confidential, sir. We've been led to believe the papers are actually a last will and testament, is that right? The professors, or rather Genshin Asogi's. Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy. Oh, is that the end of the silent treatment? And then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from his cell, didn't it? Havers no, you're that half-cocked now. I think you didn't quite get your facts right. I was there in the cell, exactly where it should have been. Oh, not what we heard elsewhere. Can we just have a wee hope around in here? I'm sure I can find it. Aye, here you are. See? Last will and testament of Genshin Asogi, written with a calligraphy brush. Of course, I can't read a word of those Japanese squiggles. I don't mind it says he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back in his homeland. Yes, that's correct. And that's the gist of it. So these are the Asogi papers? Aye, of course they are. Papers written by Asogi and they don't British. There's no mystery here, laddie. That's your lot. After all the straw shown and sliced over an execution, we sent the man's possessions back to his clan in Japan, and that was the end of it. I think we ought to make a record of this, Miss Naruhodo, just in case. The only weapon he has left. Would that be Karima? One thing before you go on your way, Miss Naruhodo. Oh, yes? You didn't even make no mention of them outside this office, or rather... Or wouldn't you just prefer it? Consider it an order from the highest levels of our government. I understand. I, Genshin Asogi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son Kazuma Asogi in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness I accept my fate in this foreign land, in the knowledge that I will never see my homeland for family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. Cosmo, what do you mean? Huh? Yes, thank you. I am confused still. All Antiques' finest fine collection of hard chalices and bottles all neatly lined up. Yes, he's extremely particular about all that. There's a strict regime for everything, from the storage of the casks to the bottling of their contents. Gosh, I must be having a really tough time of it being this thing. Actually, no. Oh? He's so particular about it all, he refuses to let anybody else touch any of it. So it's been quite easy for me, in fact. Talk about weird. Well, I found the papers. Ah.